In the last lesson, we were doing some positioning of our head section, and we saw that we're able to position our logo, company name here, our search, and so on. And now whenever we're looking at it, we're actually, because we've used the absolute position, which absolutely positions it within that element accordingly, we're actually need to look at the navigation, because this is being covered over by our logo and so on. So let's take a look at that and update this. Another thing that I want to do here is transform this into an actual navigation bar menu. So we've got our nav bar. So this is how we're identifying it. And just like the other elements that we were looking at, we need to set position to absolute, because this is going to give us the flexibility to move it around and position it where we want it to sit. So I'm going to use, instead of top, I'm going to use bottom, because I want to pull it right to the bottom of that parent element. And I'm going to give it a bottom of 0. So when I refresh it, it's pulled it down. And this is good because I still have to do the styling to transform this unordered list into an ordered list. So let's also maybe do a background color to it, so it stands out a little bit. And when you're designing it, if you're unsure of the colors that you want to use, always use grayscale colors, because this makes it easier when you apply your color schema to identify if you want a light or a dark color and so on. And also that we set bottom, we should also set left position, because we want it to hang over completely to the left. And now let's take care of our nav bar and update it. I'm actually going to move some of this stuff down, because every time I save it, brackets is moving it down on me. So I'm going to deal with the nav bar here first, and maybe I should keep the so I've got the wrapper, I've got the header, so I should keep that outside, and then the nav bar. So it's not exactly in the order that they're being presented, but because of the fact that every time I save it, it's popping it up and removing it, and I want to have this more centered because we are focusing on this content. So let's transform this nav bar into an unordered list. So first thing that we need to do is we need to get rid of the list style and update that. So let's identify it. So anything within the nav bar, and we're going to look at the list items. And so we're going to do list style. And what list style does is it allows me to get rid of those circles or decimals or discs or whatever we want to call them, and we can replace it with something entirely without any. And this is so this is pretty good, and we see that it's actually on top of that company name. So we need to still make some transformations here. So we're going to also do a float here. And what float does is it allows all of the elements to fall into place. So when we float them left, they're going to fall into place left of each other. So now it's starting to look a little bit more like a navigation bar. And we need to position them relative to each other. And this probably isn't going to make much of a difference, but we can see that now we've positioned them left of each other. So now we can also take a look and make some updates to our elements there. So let's look at the hyperlinks, because we want something to happen whenever we hover over them, and I also want to override the current hyperlinks that we set for the default of the website, because I want these to look different than links within my web page. So identify it again, and I could do ULLIA, but because we don't have anything else, any other hyperlinks contained within that main nav bar, I can just do A. And first of all, let's set some padding, because right now they're right next to each other, so that doesn't really look much like a navigation bar. So that adds in some padding, and let's update the color of these. So because we've got, just trying to find a good color, so maybe we want to do them deep sky blue, and that means we need to also update the, we want to also update and display them as blocks. So let's do style and display as block. So now we've got something that looks more like a navigation bar. There's still some things that we need to get rid of whenever we're hovering over. So maybe I'm even going to reduce this padding on it because I think that's a little bit too much maybe. And also next, so let's get rid of text decoration. I know that we've already gotten rid of it at the top, but just to make sure that we're not getting any of those underlines showing up. And now let's handle that hover. So because we don't want those underlines showing up whenever we're hovering, so let's just ensure that we don't have any of them showing up. And then this is where we can reverse the color. So let's do a background color here. So I did a blue color for there. And I know I said we should stick with the grayscales because that would make more sense. So maybe we should bring this back to grayscale and maybe make this one white. And then whenever we hover over, we're just going to reverse those. So I'll do back text and white, and then of course we can take care of these colors later on. So now we've got something that looks more like a navigation bar. Whenever we hover over it, we see that we've got these effects taking place, and it looks like that now they're more clickable. The links are more clickable. Adjustments to this, so I'm going to update the width of this to be 100%. So refresh. So now we've got the nav bar entirely across the available space. When I resize it, so everything is resizing. We see that we do have some issues there with the search going on top of that. So we're going to change that when we're making it responsive. So for now, we're not going to worry about that. And so it looks pretty good, and there is some additional styling if we want to do and add that in, of course. So just looking at this, for now I think it looks pretty good. And I almost forgot, but because we've got these unordered lists and these list items, by default it's taking in margins and padding. So this is something that we should get rid of, so that we can get rid of this within the list items. So this is why it's shifted over slightly, so margin padding, and we're going to give it 0. So this will get rid of any of those default paddings that are available. So this is something that you should always take care of, just in case, because you don't want them to be interfering with the way that your content is being displayed. And this is the same thing for the nav bar in general. So we want to get rid of any default margins or padding that might be lingering there. Just in case. Let's see, it's not really doing anything, but just in case, always a good idea to get rid of those. And one last thing, so if you like it this type of style, then this is pretty good. But if we want to take up that entire available spacing that we've got available to us, the line height, we can update that as well. And this is line height, and we just do 100%. So this allows us to take up the entire available space there. And you can make adjustments to the menu as needed. So the next lesson, we're going to start looking at the additional sections, so some of these content sections, and apply some styling to that. Because we see that whenever we're resizing, these images are just staying too big, so we need to set, similar to what we've done, we need to set a max width for them to be 100%, and we need to make some adjustments as well to how everything's being laid out when we're resizing. So all of that is coming up in the next set of lessons.